Careers panel. My name's Kristen, and I am the North American Opportunities Manager with the Career Center here in St. Andrews. So I'm located in St. Andrews. And my role is really to work with employers and students and alumni in the US as it relates to careers. And so I'm really excited today to welcome our guests and to welcome a conversation about careers in life sciences. But before I get into that, I want to turn it over to my colleague Leah to introduce herself and her team.
Thanks, Kristen. And thank you to our panelists for being here with us again as well. I just want to quickly introduce myself and our US development team before we jump in. I'm Leah Dalton. And I'm the manager of alumni and family engagement for the US. I work remotely from Maryland, and I have 3 other colleagues who are here with us on the call, also based in the US. So we have Catherine Humphreys, who's our head of development, and she's in Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. We have Lily Wen, who's a gift officer in California, just outside Los Angeles, and she covers the western half of the country. And we have Moira Sharkey, who is also a gift officer based in Massachusetts, and she covers the eastern half of the country. So as a team, we work together to strengthen and engage our community of alumni, parents, and supporters in the US. And we work to build our network through events like this, of course, typically in person when we can, but we've made quite the transition over the last year or so. So we can continue to grow our philanthropic support for the university and our US community as a whole. So I will add some of our contact information into the chat bar. Please reach out to us if you'd like. Otherwise, back to Kristen to meet our panelists.
So yeah, we have a packed group here of lots of different types of experiences and backgrounds. And I'm so excited to have them introduce themselves. So I'm going to turn it over to you as the panelists to introduce yourselves. And so Shirley, I would love to know who you are, what you're up to, and perhaps a little bit about your career story.
Hi, and welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am currently in Portland, Oregon. It's a beautiful day, and my allergies are pretty bad, so bear with me. I'm originally from Glasgow. I grew up in Rutherglen, and I went to what is now Caledonian University. I did an undergraduate degree in biology with honours in microbiology. And to be quite honest, when I graduated, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But what I realised was I really liked academia. And so I applied to Strathclyde University, and I did a 1-year course on immunology. And then at the same time, I still thought I was interested in academia. And I will preface that with I had a 2-2. And so doing a PhD was a little bit out of reach, but I realized that I was still particularly interested in maybe going down that path, even though that path maybe wasn't open to me. So I applied for a couple of positions in Glasgow as a research technician, and I also applied for a position in St. Andrews as a research assistant. And with the research assistant position in St. Andrews, I was going to be able to register part-time for a PhD, so I decided to take that position, and it was fantastic. I spent 4 years in St. Andrews, and I had the best time of my life in St. Andrews. Being a PhD student in St. Andrews was fantastic. And then again, once I graduated from St. Andrews, I really didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I was having difficulty finding a position in Scotland. And so I applied to the US for some postdoctoral positions. And I'm old enough that this was before the internet and before email. So we had to actually use the phone and call people with the time difference. And I was offered a position in Pennsylvania, and I was offered a position in Portland. And I based my decision on my friends saying you should go to the West Coast. And I also trained Aikido, which is a Japanese martial art, and the investigator that I was coming to Portland to work with, I asked him on the telephone if there were any Aikido dojos in Portland, and lo and behold, there were. So that's what I based my decision on. So then I came to Portland with the intention of staying here for 12 months, and then applying back to the UK and for another postdoc position. Well, that 12 months turned into 4 years, and then those 4 years have now turned into 29 years, and no one is more shocked than I that I stayed. But Portland is beautiful, and I just really, really liked it. I really enjoyed the academic environment. And then after 4 years as a postdoctoral fellow, I had 1 year of my own funding. I decided I don't want to do this anymore. I became a parent, and I decided that I couldn't be a good parent and a good scientist at the same time. So I took a little break, and then I realized that I was not meant to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I applied again at the university that I was working at, Oregon Health and Science University, and started working part-time as a research assistant. So I basically reinvented myself all over again. And that was great. And so I slowly but surely moved into the role that I have now. I just moved on up through the ranks. Research associate, instructor, assistant professor, associate professor. And we've had some pay equity things going on at Oregon Health and Science University right now. And just last year, 2020, I became a research administrator. And so now I direct clinical research for neurosurgeons at Oregon Health and Science University. And I still train and teach Aikido. And that's it. What else do you want to know?
Love it. Love it. We're going to do the rest of the introductions, and then I'm going to come swing back around and have a question for you. But Lewis, can you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you're up to, and a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. Just clarify, you can hear me? I'm Lewis Whitehead. I'm a 1995 chemistry graduate. I'm originally from just outside of Liverpool. I did the 4-year chemistry degree with a couple of years of mathematics, statistics, and computing fundamentals. In 91, 92, did an internship at Shell Research in my 3rd year. In 94, and then graduated in 95, and very, very sad not to continue, but I had an idea to do my PhD at the University of Southampton. I had a wonderful laboratory and classical training in chemistry, but decided that I really wanted to do theoretical chemistry in an area of computational drug discovery. And I did that for 3.5 years. And towards the end of my PhD at Southampton, I decided that I didn't want to do an academic postdoc, and I was very fortunate at a time when industrial postdocs were very unpopular to go and do drug discovery at a Swiss pharmaceutical company called Novartis. So I did a 3.5-year postdoctoral fellowship at Novartis, just outside of in a town called Horsham in West Sussex. And during that time, I designed part of a molecule that ended up being FDA approved for breast cancer 2 years ago. So if you have any idea how long the drug discovery process takes, it can be almost 20 years before someone like me as a chemist has a design idea, and then you see the FDA approval a long time after you even had anything to do with that project. At the end of my postdoc, I had a number of options, one of which was to come to New Jersey, because Novartis had a research headquarters for the USA in New Jersey. And so I moved in 2002 with the thought that I'd be over here for 3 or 4 years. On my very first day in New Jersey, they announced that they were opening up a new research site in Boston, in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And I thought, I'm going to be one of the first people up to Cambridge, Massachusetts with this new research institute. And I was at Novartis for 19 years. and left in 2018 to work for a small biotech company called Nimbus Therapeutics, which was a very computational chemistry focused drug discovery company for 3 years. And I recently left that position to go and work for a really young startup company where I'm currently the VP of computational chemistry, where we're thinking the drive is merging the AI, machine learning, computational chemistry, and biology automation, mix them all together, and you shrink down that timeline from drug discovery. Like I noted the story before, it can take a couple of decades for a drug to make it to the market, and I've been very fortunate to contribute to one. Many people go through their career without anything, and I was very lucky that within 5 years of leaving St Andrews, my chemistry training put me in a space where I made some designs on a molecule that is currently saving people's lives. At St Andrews, I did. It used to go running along the West Sands. I also got a blue in Aikido. So Shirley and I don't know one another, but I did 3 years of Aikido, and that's my story.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Lewis. That's so fascinating. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Naveed. Naveed, same question. Who are you? What are you up to? And tell us a little bit about your career journey.
Sure. So, hey, I'm Naveed. My career path is definitely a little bit shorter than Lewis and Shirley's, but I graduated from St. Andrews in 2017. I studied biology and statistics, and I currently work for Biogen. It's a biotech company that develops drugs for neurological and neurodegenerative diseases. So when I was at St. Andrews, I guess not too long ago, I knew that I didn't want to work in the lab, but I still wanted to work in the life sciences space. I did a couple of internships at some biotech companies, Merck and Amgen, and then I began to realize that I really want to work on the business side of the biotech industry. So I was fairly focused on that. Then I got to my 4th year and I still felt kind of lost. I remember looking for positions at large biotech companies, at smaller biotech companies. I even pursued some opportunities at life science consulting firms, even one in healthcare investment banking. I was really all over the place. I hadn't really solidified my interests yet. Eventually, I got the opportunity to work in my current role at Biogen. In my current role, I work for this group called Strategic Analytics, and the idea is to support parts of the drug development process by implementing solutions in business process optimization, automation, data analytics, and program planning. So it's kind of like an internal consulting group / business operations group for drug development. And for me, it was a great opportunity to leverage both my biology and statistics background and collaborate with scientists, program managers to optimize workflows and create tools. So I started in an analyst position looking at workflows and creating tools. Then I progressed into my current role as a business operations lead, where I manage all of our ongoing innovation projects and continue to lead some of our business process optimization initiatives. And I also spend part of my time working on our global product strategy team, launching our drug for major depressive disorder and postpartum depression, which has been really interesting.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Gosh, just such a wealth of experience here and interesting backgrounds. So just so everybody's aware, here's how the rest of our time is going to go. I'm going to have a few questions for each of our panelists to answer. And then if there are any questions from the audience, anyone who's on the call, we'll welcome those after that. So definitely be thinking about what you want to ask the panelists, and you can either put that in the chat or you can come on camera and ask the question. But I'm going to start off with just a few of them so you can kind of think through what you want to ask. So Shirley, I'm going to start with you. I know that one of the things that you have throughout your career kind of rejected, or maybe that's not the right word, but navigated around the question of, should I have a specialization, and how should I specialize? Can you talk a little bit to that, and how do you see that playing out in your field?
I would say that let me think. I never particularly had a set goal. I was always just living in the moment, open to the opportunities that were right there in front of me at that time. And I think I knew I had a clear vision of where I didn't want to be or what I didn't want to do. But I had no clear vision of where I really wanted to go. And so I think, and of course it was at a different time. Networking was so different because there was not the internet, and there wasn't LinkedIn, and there wasn't the ability to, I mean, like, even now is very different, because the ability to network now is very different from how it was just last year. So I would just say I just remained open. I just always knew that I liked learning, and I really enjoyed academia. I felt like I fit in academia. I've talked to a lot of people recently about, and particularly women, about imposter syndrome. And I felt like I was an imposter in my own family. I didn't feel like I fit in there because, not to be too blunt, I was the smart one. And so I didn't really feel like I fit in with my family, but I really felt like I fit in academia with all the quirky parts of being like a smart person comes along with it. And I still work with very, very intelligent people, and quite frankly, they're very quirky. And so I always felt like I fit in there, and I didn't feel like an outsider. And so I guess I would just say, be open to all the possibilities that are around you. There are many paths, and there are many paths to get to where you want to go if you do have a goal. And you don't have to take the straight path. I don't feel like I took a straight path. Having a 2-2 wasn't a disappointment to me. It was just another challenge to overcome and go where I wanted to go. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And I'm sorry, I did the rookie mistake and I didn't plug in my computer before this started. But yes, amazing. That does help. And I guess one of the things I'm hearing you say is that having a goal, although that's not a bad endeavor to have, but there's so much, I guess, excitement that can come with being like asking yourself what's right in front of me, and how do I make a smart decision with what's right in front of me, which kind of leads me into my next question. And I want to direct this towards Naveed, but if anybody has additions that they want to put into this. Naveed, you talked a lot about, like, you didn't want to work in a lab, but you wanted to be in life sciences. And so, for any student who's sort of listening in thinking, gosh, that resonates with me, or maybe I don't even know, like, would I like a lab? How do you make that decision? What goes into making that decision? How did you navigate that? And maybe what does a degree or degree title play into that decision? How does it play into that decision?
Sure. So I think it's a tough, decision to solidify your interests, especially whilst you're studying. I would definitely put a huge emphasis on trying to be self-aware in classes and your extracurriculars. For me, there was a couple classes I took in St. Andrews. One was pharmacology, and one was structure-based drug discovery, which really opened my eyes to how the industry touches business. And for me, that was a really eye-opening experience. And I remember for one of my summer internships, I didn't get my top choice. I was actually hoping to have a research position, but it ended up being on the commercial side of a biotech company. And for me, even though that was a disappointment initially, it was actually a turning point. It made me realize that, wow, this is something that I wanted to do. So similar to Shirley's point, I think it's really key to keep an open mind and consider all possible avenues. Another aspect that really solidified my interest in the industry was I began to keep up with industry news. Actually, my fourth year at St. Andrews, I worked as an analyst for the St. Andrews Global Investment Group. I had no interest in investing at the time, so it's a good opportunity for me to analyze biotech stocks and understand the shifts that were going on in the industry. So I definitely encourage students to have an open mind and explore all those avenues. And if you realize that you don't want to work in the lab, I will say that I think that there's still a benefit to getting a PhD or an advanced degree, which leads to your second question. I think, especially now, having a PhD is really advantageous. Even if you look at venture capital firms or even people who work in corporate strategy at biotech companies, a handful of them, or a lot of them, do have PhDs because you do need to understand the science in order to make investments in early stage companies. I think other avenues, getting an MBA or a JD, are also great opportunities depending on where you want to move within the broader life sciences industry.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm wondering too, perhaps this is kind of a question for everybody, is on top of academics, oh yeah, master's of public health is also a good path. Yeah, sure. On top of the academic side of things, what are some of the non-academic things? Naveed, you mentioned Global Investment Group. Are there other things that, like, as you think about maybe what was helpful in your path or what you'd like to see if you've seen applications from new graduates, what are some of those extra things that you would like to see that are advantageous in a career?
I mean, I'll make a comment related to professional societies. So I do a lot of volunteer work on the governance side of the American Chemical Society. And due to Shirley's point on specialization a couple of minutes ago, I find myself trained as a chemist who can computer program, but I'm also doing toxicology. I'm also doing structural biology. So my original training is quite far away from what my day job really is. And I'm not lab based. But the professional societies, one thing that they also do is there are biology, biochemistry, organic chemistry, cheminformatics, computational chemistry, toxicology. There are so many overlapping fields nowadays that the volunteership that I do for the American Chemical Society, or even IUPAC, which is the global recognized chemistry organization, kind of gives you different perspectives on, I may be in drug discovery, but someone in petrochemicals or food manufacturing might have an interesting spin on an idea that I'm trying to work at, and it's kind of trying to piece together these odd connections sometimes. So I found my career breadth widened a lot more when I got involved in the professional societies, and you started writing grants for work that I do in Africa that's not really anything to do with my day job, but it's something that maybe in 10 or 20 years I might be doing something completely different. And I'm not kind of expecting the company that I work for to be solely responsible for where my career goes.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing both from Lewis and Naveed here is that interdisciplinary aspect of you're taking multiple fields and combining them to see, like, and seeing where that synergy lies. And I think, Naveed, I heard you say, like, yeah, I looked at investments to see what what biotech companies were doing well, what's happening in the field, which is a really interesting way to go about looking for more information about a particular company or particular field. So yeah, I love that. Does anyone else want to weigh in on the non-academic involvements that can be helpful?
I would just like to add, you know, to Naveed and Lewis, you remind me of something about drug development. And so what happens in my world is that the clinical research coordinators who work with me, who are all bachelor degree trained, work hand in hand alongside patients. And we're testing those drugs per se in humans because we're doing the clinical trials. And you remind me, Lewis, Novartis, we work with Novartis a lot. And there are two drugs that come to mind. At OHSU, one of our investigators worked on Gleevec for cancer, and that was a big drug discovery. And clinical research coordinators are the people who are on the ground, working hand in hand with the patients, the same with my staff. And so, you know, they're the ones who are talking to the patients, following the patients are in the clinical trial. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the patient and the clinical research assistant who is working with them are the ones who have worked on collecting all the data, gathering all the data. You know, there's I don't know if you want to call it customer service, but they're definitely working hand in hand with the patient. And then at the end of the day, the drug gets approved. And I know from my staff, they feel like they've made a huge difference just by working in that realm. So there's many stages along the way where someone who has life sciences education, I have a broad spectrum of staff in my group. One person is a licensed practical nurse. One person has an undergrad in microbiology. Another person has some global health interest. One is an emergency medical technician, and one is a real data analyst. And so, but they all work together to help make drugs get approved, or devices. We do a lot of we do some device work too. So in the neurosciences and across the life sciences, there are many places where people with undergraduate life science degrees can work and make a difference. We also work with the Institutional Review Board. Those analysts also help us. Naveed, you mentioned JDs. For our contracting, we work with JDs. I'm just glad that's not my job because those contracts are horrible. So there's lots of places. Technology transfer in a university too is a place where I see a lot of people with MDs and PhDs on the business side of academia. So there's lots of places where you can fit in if you're looking for options.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Thank you. Lewis, next question I want to turn over to you. Talk to me a bit about failure in your career. Like, what does it feel like and how do you navigate that? Inevitably, everybody will come across it.
So, bizarrely, failure's kind of baked into my job. I wouldn't say I'm the greatest person of dealing with rejection, but bizarrely, I kind of have a very large tolerance for failure because it's kind of my discipline is building models, and models generally fail at some point. I shared this concept before, particularly thinking back 25 years in terms of the risks that I took in terms of making that decision to move out of the lab, which I thoroughly enjoyed that work, but I felt like in the mid-90s you could clearly see I could clearly see what was happening with computers and the internet, and being able to take that risk of moving to a group where my PI at the time had just finished his postdoc at Yale and came back to the UK to set up a group. So as his first PhD student was, this is going to be a lot of hard work and I'm going to be on my own. And it was somewhat similar with my decision to do an industrial postdoc. On my very first day in that job, I was on a drug discovery project, and I could understand the chemistry, I could understand the comp chem, but I wasn't a medicinal chemist. So I have no doubt that I was failing quite routinely at that point. But the irony is, in a discipline like mine, very few people, if anybody, really knows everything that's going on, and to some degree, we're all to kind of playing a little bit of a game of, is what you're saying really true? So I can't really say that I've experienced the type of failure that we're not sending spaceships up to Mars that don't make it to the surface, but certainly over a period, my failures are measured in time, and the project that I described during my postdoc, that project failed. It wasn't necessarily anything to do with my work, but then another Swiss-based team took the data that we had and made some minor modifications and then moved it on. So even from what was our project failure, it was somebody else's success that 20 years later, you never quite know. You can't really quantify whether you're thinking you're failing today. It might be somebody else's success. So there's obviously a career component to that, of how much risk you're worthy of tolerating. It's baked into my job that there's an acceptance of a level of failure, because we are at the cutting edge. That's science to some degree. I'm guessing in the case that Shirley just mentioned, a JD can't get a contract wrong, because that is potentially billions of dollars. So but I don't believe that it can't be engineered into everybody's career somehow to, let's try something. I don't know what the bandwidth for everyone is, but do you have the capacity to play? Do you have the capacity to fail? Because certainly that's how I've learned a great deal over the last 25 years.
Yeah, I love that. Sounds like the world of life sciences, the world of science is a big group project in that way. That one person's success or discovery can really help someone else, or help advance different spaces, which I love. Anyone else want to add anything to that? Shirley, you look like you might be ready to. Nope. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then after that, I'll turn it over to the audience in case anyone has a question that they want to ask or pose. So I would love to know from all three of you, what do you see as the advantages of going to university overseas in a place like St. Andrews, for students who might be going to the US for the first time, or returning back to the US with a St. Andrews degree?
I'll start. So I think there are a couple different advantages. I think one aspect I really enjoyed about St. Andrews is, unlike the US system, you really go into depth into your degree. Some of the courses I mentioned, like structure-based drug discovery, I don't think a lot of US schools go into that much depth. And the reason we're able to go into that much depth is because you start, your first and second year focusing on the subjects you want to study. So I think that's a great advantage. I also think that the U.S. presence of St. Andrews Alumni has really increased a lot the past 5 to 10 years, noticeably. And even though there may not be that many alumni compared to the UK, I have found that when you reach out to alumni, they're always very ready to help you and connect you with colleagues. That's something that I've really enjoyed, even just being out of school for 4 years.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Naveed.
I would add that I didn't have to do a 4-year degree. I came north across a little border that, depending on which side you of the political historical spectrum, I consider myself British, but my peer group didn't have to most of them did 3-year degrees. In my case, I knew that that extra year would be incredibly valuable from the perspective of I didn't really actually feel, maybe I have a little bit of a similar background to Shirley. My family background was such that I was the first one going to college, and they didn't really understand even how college worked. And I did feel like I needed that extra year to kind of adjust to kind of an environment that would be a little alien to me. But the irony, as I look back, is St Andrews had that 3rd year with a sabbatical and internship, and not I think there was only other one institution at the time that had that type of 7-month or 1-year type sandwich year. And that year for me, I worked at Shell, so I understood how bad petrol emissions are. I was modeling that type of work, which was one of the reasons why 6 or 7 years later I started getting interested in an electric car company called Tesla. And then just when that company IPO'd, I bought its shares. So it's an irony that if I hadn't gone to St Andrews and done that internship at Shell, I wouldn't have been an early adopter of a car company, a car that's parked right outside my door. And it's kind of, you've got that kind of, it's a lot more concentrated education, because I know in my peer group here, it's almost like, did you just do 1 semester of chemistry? Because I did 3 years of chemistry. It's a lot more concentrated. Now, concentration's not for everyone, because there are certainly people in my group, were in 95, some would never go into the lab again and were kind of happy to leave. But, that extra year for me was incredibly valuable from that kind of, I did a lot of mathematics and statistics and computing in the first couple of years, as well as the chemistry specialization. It kind of broadened my scope, and it's certainly a school that is has repute in North America and all around the world, and I know that's true.
Amazing, thank you.
I would echo all those sentiments. It's definitely the depth of the education that you're going to get in Scotland, because we're talking about a university in Scotland. And I was very, very shocked when I first moved to the United States, and we had undergraduate students in the lab, and they were studying Shakespeare for their degree. And I'm like, why are you studying Shakespeare? Didn't you do that in high school? So the answer is no, they don't even do that in high school. So then they do it when they're in college. And I kind of sit on the fence with this. I do really appreciate that in my Scottish education, I was streamlined very early on, because I was in the science stream, and I joke about career counselor. I had to fill my high school curriculum, as it's called now, and I was told not to take secretarial studies because other people needed to get jobs, and now all I do is sit in front of a keyboard. So I do find that quite hilarious, and instead I did accounting and did nothing with that. But so I go back to the depth of the education you will get. But like I said, I live on the fence, because I do think the depth is really good, but then again, in the American system, there's more variation and there's more opportunities. So just like Lewis said, sometimes concentration in one or specialization in a particular degree is not for someone. And in that case, the American system is more broad. And I would say too that people still say things to me like, you went to St Andrews? And I'm just like, well, yeah, it's a school. It's just like, it's a university, but it's so old. I'm like, well, yeah, it's old. So, and I mean, and I got my PhD there, which is different. And even the PhD system in the US is different. People I talk to here are somewhat miserable doing their PhD because they're still going to classes, and it's like they're doing an undergraduate degree. And when I did my PhD, it was in St Andrews, it was so liberating because I was just in the lab the whole time, and I didn't have to go to class anymore. Although I did take the genetics class at St Andrews like 3 times, because one day I was convinced I was going to learn genetics, but I'm still struggling with it years on. So I would say the depth of the education is definitely really important. And if that's what you're looking for, that's definitely what you're going to get.
Great, love it. Is there anyone who has a question? Either you can pop it in the chat, or feel free to come on camera and ask the question. Yes, Shirley says, ask questions, please. Okay, looks like we got one coming in here.
Sorry, I'm just gonna speak because I started to type and it feels counterproductive for you guys to all be sitting there waiting with bated breath for a question to come in.
No worries.
So my background is I did a master's in neuroscience at St Andrews, and my partner is American, so I'm quite keen to go to America. So I'm really keen to do lab work and stay within the life sciences fields. But just finding opportunities in the US with the kind of visa issue and where to focus my search is something that I've really been struggling with. So if any three of you have any advice for that, I'd hugely appreciate it.
Yeah, Emma, right? Did I get that right?
Yes. Yes.
The visa thing is really difficult these days. I mean, I feel very fortunate. I came on a J1 and I stayed on my J1 for, let me think, 2 years. And then I married an American. So then he became my sponsor. And so I had a green card for a long time. And I actually really struggled with that too. I didn't become a citizen until just maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I really struggled with that decision because it wasn't my life dream to become an American citizen. And even at my citizenship ceremony, I really felt like a fraud because there were people there, it was genuinely their life dream to become an American citizen. And it wasn't really mine. But I did it because I wanted to vote. I had reached that point where just based on the political climate in the United States, I really wanted to vote. And so the visa issue is really difficult these days because so much has changed. So much has changed. I don't even know how anyone can navigate the landscape. And I'm not suggesting that you marry your partner in any shape or form just to become a citizen. But that path for me was a little easier because that's the path that I took. And I wasn't expecting to do that when I moved here either. And it depends where your partner wants to work too. I mean, if you have a master's, you're well set to move into a lab as a research assistant, probably not as a postdoc. And same with the other things I mentioned to you, clinical trial research coordinators, working in tech transfer. Somebody, I think, Kristen, you asked for what we're looking for in candidates. I sit on a panel that interviews medical students who are coming in to be residents in neurosurgery. And I sometimes get worried that everyone does too much. I wonder if they actually sleep because they have so many volunteer things on their resumes that really worries me that they're completely burned out. So I kind of look for more of a balance when I'm looking at candidates. I'm looking for candidates who have, you know, a good academic record, which is basically everybody. They're good global citizens, and they're not burning themselves out to be something that's just too much. So yeah, I hear you. The visa thing is particularly challenging, but I wouldn't let it be a roadblock. I would just try and get an institution to be your sponsor, which is what happened with me. The institution was my sponsor on a G1.
Thank you, Shirley. That's hugely, hugely helpful. And yeah, so many useful little tidbits there that I'll definitely take forward.
I will controversially add too, and I'm guessing you're white.
Yes.
Your white privilege. Well, I'm just going to put it out there. I feel like I'm more accepted because I'm white and I speak English. And as much as that advantage really bothers me, it's definitely still there and it still happens. I mean, when my husband and I went to the the immigration office to be interviewed, we were looked at differently from the other people in the room. And so I just like to bring that up. I wear it. It's there.
Thanks, Shirley, for your input. Really appreciate it. Naveed, Lewis, anything to add to that one?
I play football on a Monday night. They call it soccer over here. And with a former colleague of mine who's works in Naveed's organization, Emma, if you want me to, he's unfortunately a Newcastle United supporter, and he's from London. If you want me to put you in touch with him just to maybe just generally have a chat, because obviously a big company like Biogen, like my experience at Novartis, I came over on like a work transfer visa that was temporary for 3 or 4 years. Very similar to Shirley. It was an opportunity that I felt like I'll go for 3 years and then I'll come back to the UK. But if that's the type of connection that you'd like me to make, obviously neuro is big in Naveed's company. It's not in mine. Naveed and I obviously work in a city that's exploded over the last decade or two in terms of biopharma. But let someone know if that's a connection, and I'm sure that my footballing colleague Stuart would have time just to chat with you.
That would be absolutely amazing, Lewis. Yeah, definitely. If there's a way that we can get in touch, I don't know what the best way to organise that through this is, but I'm 100% for it. Don't play football myself, but would definitely be up for some Biogen connections.
The other suggestion I was going to make is, I know sponsorship is tough, but it does seem that if you want to do research at a larger biotech company, they may have more opportunities to sponsor folks from overseas. I'm not sure what the case was at Novartis, Lewis, but I think it may be worth focusing, if you want to work at a biopharma company in a research or lab-based role, to focus on the big ones to start.
Yes, amazing. Love it. Mara said, the power of the St. Andrews Network at work. That is truth right there. Fantastic. Are there any other questions that the audience wants to ask? Anybody who is out there waiting to ask a question?
Don't be shy. We're not scary. Ask whatever you want.
I'll jump in and ask another one, just as maybe if there's someone who's formulating their question in their mind. If you were hiring right now, you had a stack of CVs in front of you, what would set a student out or candidate out for something that they have on their CV in your field?
I think one major shift I've noticed is, for folks who have a background in life sciences, I think having a quantitative background or being comfortable with quants, either in softwares like R, which I know they teach at St. Andrews, or really being comfortable with mathematics and statistics will definitely play a huge role not only in research roles, but also business roles as well. I think something else that is huge is, on the resume, seeing, candidates who have showcased the ability to collaborate and work in teams. And that's not always an experience you can necessarily get when working in the lab, through, research. But I do think that, getting even involved in other events or organizations on campus, you'll be able to showcase that you do have the ability to collaborate and, lead. So that's something I encourage as well. And the last bit is any way where you can showcase problem-solving skills. I think that's also something we look for as well.
Amazing. Thanks, Naveed.
Going back to a comment that I made before, I was very fortunate to have that internship at Shell between my bachelor's and my PhD. I spent the summer at Unilever, and then my PhD was funded by SmithKline. So candidates that I've where I see you've spent some time in an industrial setting would be a differentiator for me, because I feel like that is showing that you feel that that's the direction that you're going in. It certainly clarified for me my particular direction, and that's kind of why I kind of wrote letters and said, I'll work for free as long as you give me 10 weeks of your 10 weeks at a desk. So that's a differentiator for me.
And in my world, it's communication skills. If I was to hire a clinical research coordinator tomorrow, we would be looking for someone who would fit with our team. We're a pretty cohesive team, and Naveed mentioned that. You also have to be able to communicate with principal investigators, and in our case, that's neurosurgeons and neuroendocrinologists, neurologists. They're not easy to communicate with, and patients. And that takes a broad spectrum of communication skills. You have to be able to interpret the science at very many different levels. And so, I would even look at hiring someone who has a bachelor's in speech communication, who had some background in the life sciences also, because being able to speak about a drug to a patient, to a sponsor like Novartis, and to an investigator is something that is missing in science a great deal. I mean, you can see right now, I'm thinking actually I put MPH, Masters in Public Health. I think public health is a real big push in the United States right now, but as is science communication, because we've seen so much bad information. So I think science communication is a field that will open up a great deal. I mean, I look at Dr. Fauci, and much of what he said has been misinterpreted, and I don't think scientists are the best communicators. And so I think there's a niche there for people who can communicate science better.
Yes, totally. Great. Thank you all so much. I didn't see any more questions coming through the chat. So if there are any, feel free to quick raise your hand or jump in there. Good, we got one more. All right. Thank you. Yes, Amanda says thank you. Okay, so we have just a couple quick minutes left. I just want to wrap us up. First of all, thank you so much, Naveed, Lewis, and Shirley, for your time and your wisdom and your perspectives that you've brought. Really, really appreciate it. Learned a lot. One of the things that I just want to point out in this conversation for anyone listening is, I mean, we saw the power of the St. Andrews Network here at work. And for anyone looking to get connected in, there is a platform called St. Connect. And St. Connect is really an opportunity for the St. Andrews community to come together online, to learn from one another and to grow and connect. And so would really encourage anybody, if you're not on St. Connect, to really do that and make your way to that platform. And then I want to turn it over to Naveed. So there is a really exciting program that's developing within St. Connect at the moment. But Naveed, can you talk a little bit about the Life Sciences Mentorship Program?
Sure. So within St. Connect, we have a group called Life Sci Connect. And the idea is that this group acts as a mentorship program for current students and recent graduates who are interested in pursuing a career in the life sciences industry. So it's a good opportunity to leverage the alumni network to explore, learn about, prepare for careers, and you can ask all those common questions, and hopefully you have that light bulb go off in your head, and you're like, wow, this is a career path that I want to pursue. As of now, if you join the group, you can be paired with a mentor, and you can continue to have conversations with them. So if you're interested as an alumni to be a mentor or a current student, look out for the Life Sci Connect group on St. Connect.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yes, exciting resources. So definitely make sure you check that out. So yeah, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And so appreciate your perspectives and what you've brought and your time today. So thank you. Thank you. And with that, we can sign off.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kristen.
Kristen.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.